Look around you. The meaning of success in a professional career has never been further from stereotypes. Any kind of stereotypes. In fact, you don't need them. Just as you don't need to fit into the slot prepared for you. Success has become an individual game in which you set the rules, grab the deck, deal the cards, and play yours.
There's no such a thing as a leader for everything. So leadership works in the time, in the context, in the situations.
If you want an institution to do interesting things, hire interesting people. And so it's stuff that does not require, as the Americans say, rocket science.
I have an orthodontist friend who envisions what the mouth would look like when he finishes. So that guides him. It's the intellectual creation that precedes the physical creation. And not only do you develop the final end in mind, but also the means and ends are so inseparably connected together.
When I say, where do you put a manager in the network, people sort of scratch their head, like on top. Can't put them on top. If you put them on top of the network, they're out of it.
And I would say to any young person, get out into the game, learn from your own mistakes, learn by doing, go start a company, go create something. Be the innovator in your own company. Take the risk. Don't be just part of a bureaucracy.
Find your voice and inspire others to find theirs. In other words, what are you good at? What do you love doing? And what do you feel a call to do by your conscience? And what need does it serve? If you overlap conscience, need, passion, and talent.
Leadership is, like Alice's Wonderland, fantasy-driven, but utterly real. In fact, full of reality, of real-life characters in disguise. Jack Welch, Steve Jobs. There's a name behind each leadership style, a reflection of the zeitgeist in office, the reflection of the leader who best incarnates the full array of attributes and competencies required according to the conventional wisdom of his or her times. But the foundations of business, the building blocks of organizations, leadership and its tenets, are undergoing a recreation process. They're being replaced with entirely new ways of interacting inside and outside companies. Pyramids become networks. Positions become nodes. Reporting lines become peer-to-peer relationships.
To manage a network, you have to be everywhere. You have to move around. It's not just a metaphor, and it's not just a drawing on a piece of paper. It's a very profound metaphor that has huge influence on how people think.
First of all, common understanding, common framework for thinking, then very clear communication, and this is where the CEO or the leader is particularly responsible.
Nobody wants a manager who doesn't lead. A manager who doesn't lead there's no inspiration, there's no feeling, there's no oomph. A leader who doesn't manage doesn't know what's going on. They're disconnected, and we have this idea of grand leaders who sit up on top of these orchestra pedestals and sort of lead that way, and that's not leadership. That's disconnection, that's detachment.
When I give my speeches these days, I start them with an example of the CEO of Starbucks, Howard Schultz, and how he almost religiously visits 25 stores a week. And the idea is, no matter how big you are, no matter how smart your staff is, no matter how much market research you have, I've still got to watch me, the employee, one employee, serving one customer, one cup of coffee.
CEO has to be repeating over and over again. Here's what we are, here's why we're different, here's what we're trying to distinguish ourselves in doing.
Well, I have a philosophy of really built on 4 pillars. You define a mission. Where are you going to go? And then you just put together a set of behaviors for your employees. So mission and values, or mission and behaviors, defines where you're going to go and how you're going to get there. The how and the why.
Regardless of your job, who you work with, or what people around you expect from you, it is what you do with what you encounter that turns you into a leader. When you take the lead, when you step out of line.
You know, serving a customer, a step to serve a customer, where the leader will actually go the extra mile himself or herself to actually serve the customer in the way the company wants to stand for.
Imagine what you have to do to get that kind of involvement and commitment. If you don't have it, people won't execute your strategic plan.
I think this issue of execution or implementation or realization or whatever we want to call it is I think now one of those areas that's just as important in a way as coming up with the strategy itself.
I at some level think it's more difficult than ever or easier to forget.
And then you'll end up with more urgent problems, more fires to put out. And eventually what happens in most organizations is urgency replaces importance.
I like the phrase calculated chaos, controlled disorder. Managerial work is not organized very well because you never know what's going to happen next. So managerial work has to be very adaptable, very flexible.
Nevertheless, remember that one swallow does not make a spring, nor does one day. So keep at it, persist, be self-aware, do what it takes to understand yourself, your passions, your ambitions, your competencies. But never take yourself too seriously. Neither let anybody say you're average. Maybe we were tamed into average, rewarded for fitting. But if you've already left the herd and moved forward, you've broken the spell and discovered what's needed. Charisma is overrated. Intelligence is overrated. Image, trendiness, and coolness, overrated. Organizational charts are overrated because leadership doesn't result from an extraordinary IQ, having formal authority, or being confident, charming, and inspiring. Trust, clarity, sensibility, integrity, empathy, courage are some of the traces of a good leader, as well as multifocal thinking and networking savvy. In fact, mostly soft skills. They're hard to learn, but critical to effectiveness and success in a world where emotional intelligence, cultural intelligence stand out as core competencies.
Through your personal experience and your challenges in life and the difficulties you face and the kinds of jobs you have, you learn your way with the potential. From birth, you learn your way into leadership and management capabilities.
And once you have that in your mind, you don't think the stripes on the shoulder from the uniform has all the ideas. You look everywhere for ideas, high, low, middle.
We shouldn't talk about leadership ever without talking about communityship, because it's about community, it's about people working together.
I got a slide somewhere and it says people, customers, action, values. And so we were reminding people of, quote unquote, the obvious, which seemed to have slid out of sight in the process.
The most important thing is to serve those customers and satisfy those customers, respecting the employees, building a sense of community. For me,
many leaders in the 20th century thought they were godlike figures and they could do it all themselves, and realize you have to turn to your team. That's what's really important.
On the Harvard Business School MBA website, the word leader or leadership appears 55 times. It's a sham. It's a sham. They don't create leaders.
Leadership, born or made? There were times when that was the key question. Today, when it's the relevance of an issue that is critical, there is no urgency to answer that question. The pace of change, the rhythm of innovation, the evidence of ongoing creativity suggest that leaders are made, and not necessarily at business schools.
Is leadership born or made? Leadership is born and made.
Best lessons I ever had. I made mistakes, but boy, I learned so much. It helped me enormously when I came to Medtronic many years later. And I would say to any young person, get out into the game, learn from your own mistakes, learn by doing, go start a company, go create something, be the innovator in your own company, take the risk. Don't be just part of a bureaucracy.
You don't create leaders in a classroom. You don't create managers in a classroom. You simply don't do that. And anybody who believes that is dangerous.
It's not the sophisticated strategic approach that comes from a Mike Porter or comes from a Rene Mauborgne or what have you, or even Clayton Christensen.
There's nothing you can do in a classroom to turn someone into a manager or into a leader.
Because a lot of people can fix other people's mistakes and they can define reality, but they can't face their own reality.
And you do that through experience on the job. And then we can come in as academics in a university setting or management development programs and enhance and enable those people to enhance their capabilities.
You must admit that finger pointing is easy. Maybe because it's a quick shortcut, or better because it's the easiest way out. It's a fact that leadership is compressed, squeezed and stretched by greater connectivity, broader perspectives and their counterparts, shrinking time to think beyond short-term priorities and immediate responsibilities, managing pressures from the ever-growing number of stakeholders that inhabit this world of radical transparency, and dealing with real-time information flows that bring planning horizons closer and closer to the present. Being a leader is not a state. It's an ongoing process. It's moving out of the comfort zone, out of self-restraint, safety, fear, into decision-making, knowledge-sharing, choice, change, growth.
Sometimes the right person appears at the right time and exhibits leadership capabilities. It doesn't mean they're capable of leading in other contexts. So leadership is not a generic thing.
You're in the spotlight. You can have a great career for 30 years and you can destroy it in 30 minutes by making bad decisions.
Sometimes leaders have to, or managers or chief executives have to make key decisions. Of course they have to. But often what they have to do is stimulate a process where other people are making effective decisions.
Because you've got to be able to tell people where they stand at all times. They must know where they fit, how well they're doing, what they have to do to improve.
I had a chance to be a general manager at age 27, starting up the consumer microwave oven business for Litton Industries. I put a strategic plan together. My boss said, it's a mess, you go out there, and about 9 months into it, it's a mess, you go out there and figure out how to make this thing work.
Effective managers and leaders are flawed. Everybody is flawed. But in the job, they're not fatally flawed.
Get into the game. Don't just go to work for, be an analyst or be a consultant. Get into the game. Make mistakes.
Of course, top-down, hierarchical, command and control, charismatic, tough, traditional leadership is the natural product of the old management model and its mechanical metaphor. Though they're not disappearing anytime soon, single, formal, dominant hierarchies do not get along well with the still unfolding new business model in which organizations are made up of many soft hierarchies, born out of those untapped natural leaders that manage to find their way through the weeds of the organizational chart. Now that transformation and change are normal conditions, it is the best of times to rewrite the essence of leadership. But beware, leadership does not admit quick fixes. Why should anyone be led by you? Before you start jotting down the reasons, the question is not a management drill, but the title of a book on leadership. As Gary Hamel once noted, it's the best daily motto for any leader to be, and lots of leaders in office. He says, if you reflect on this question every morning, your leadership can't but improve. In today's creative economy, organizations need a new currency of power, one based not on titles, but on the capacity of every individual to lead every day. Otherwise, they won't be fit for the future. It's the people stuff, as Tom Peters loves to put it. If your company doesn't foster a sort of inner market of leading talents, without blocking or conditioning with formalities the osmotic capacity of organizational boundaries, leadership will never deliver its full potential as a competitive advantage.
What are the qualities of the effective manager/leader? I basically say, well, find a list. There are lots of lists, and I find one list, and I list the 6 or 8 characteristics on that list, because every list, you can't have a list of 40 characteristics.
Follow your true north.
You find your voice, you don't need any supervision. And inspire others to find their voice.
This idea of finding the magic formula for what makes people, it's a question of what the job is and what their characteristics are and whether their flaws are not fatal.
Management varies little from organization to organization. With the people stuff separated out, it's easy to discover who's in charge of what. It's easy to see where the levers that set things in motion are. Thus, given that business-as-usual scenario, if you pull the trigger, no matter what company you're in, you'll get the same shot. Only when you put people on stage can you expect something different to happen. But don't go chasing after the Illuminati. Instead, let the natural leaders in your organization flourish.
Yeah, well, management's loaded with myths. I mean, we're just loaded with myths of all kinds. And one of the myths is the manager sitting on the podium conducting the orchestra.
We're trying to deal with all the things coming up, and I think the 7 lessons apply very definitely here as well as they did a year ago. And so I came out with this new book thinking about what do we need to do to help leaders at all levels lead through crisis. You know, the old saying goes, a smooth sea never made a great mariner. And this is the very best opportunity to learn how to lead, is to get into a crisis, not stand on the sidelines and observe, but actually be a player and figure out how to do it.
Everything's going wrong, and you know the stagehands are making noise, and people aren't playing right, and everything's going wrong.
Dig deep for the root cause. You know, so often we miss what the root cause of the problem is.
It's like an orchestra conductor, all right, but during rehearsals, not during performance. The myth is, the myths die very strong, but managers like to think of themselves as very grand. Some managers do anyway.
It's a fact that natural leaders don't appear on any organization chart. You have to hunt them down, but they're not difficult prey. Whose advice is sought most often? Whose responses are judged most helpful? Who is most likely to reach out? Whose opinions are most valued, internally and externally? Who's most densely connected inside and outside the organization? Who seems truly critical to key decisions?
Good leaders live out the strategy themselves, in the way they behave and how they spend their time. And I've seen many cases where you'll see a good leader take a seemingly minor step, but the step just sends an incredible message about the strategy.
Again, relative to being in a room with somebody that we all know. We all know if we're retailers that even if we're, you know, the chief financial officer, you ought to be out visiting shops. You need to smell it and taste it and feel it and so on. And so, you know, it is that just working on those basic issues that is an absolute turn on.
In today's world, the velocity of information on the internet moves so fast, and there's so many blogs out there and Twitter and all these accounts, and information is there.
The great organizations spend their time on things that are important. They get everyone on the same page about purpose, vision, and values.
What they're really doing, which is I think more important, is to create a system or a structure or a philosophy or a culture where people are making effective decisions.
This is where leaders fail to follow their true north. They either bow under the pressure and can't handle the pressure of saying, we made a mistake, or they capitulate and get caught in a seduction.
What side are you on? Are you the now sought-after natural leader, the innovative CEO looking for one or more energizing engines to pull teams and ideas around the company? Or are you the entrepreneur seeking for an additional dash of passion to reignite the initial fire? Whichever the case, you must be ready for the dramatic shift that new leadership is driving into traditional power structures. It's the 21st century, but still, man is a carnivore, and predatory instincts don't disappear because you wrap colored silk around your neck. Wear neat and sober suits. Behave according to protocols. Even in today's disruptive, networked, creative context, with managerial structures and practices constantly changing, with individuals regaining ownership of the development of their full-fledged original talent, leaders leaving behind their top-down command and control style, instincts prevail, the good and the bad. Be ready, because, well, it's true that you can take the lead, set your own rules, create the future. The big game is still a game. A game you play with multiple players as passionate and excited as you are.
So it's a new leadership model where the leader is one with moral authority and is a servant leader rather than a boss that people are kissing up to and telling him or her what he or she wants to hear, not what they need to hear. And then you have to institutionalize these principles into the structure and systems and processes. If it's not institutionalized, it won't last.
Don't forget the people. Don't forget the customers. Don't forget the relationship. In the middle of the great relationships, don't forget you just got to plain do stuff.
This is your opportunity to get out in front of the game, to totally change the game.
And I think really good managers and leaders think for themselves. They don't follow the crowd. They don't buy subprime mortgages because everybody's buying subprime mortgages. They're in touch. I think they know what's going on. I think they don't micromanage. They just know what's going on. There's a difference between micromanaging and knowing what's going on.
That's the opportunity to go on offense while everyone else is kind of hunkering down playing defense.
Is this the best it's going to get? Are you done? Of course not, you say, and then go on iterating excuses. No one takes me into account. You think you need to be in charge to have influence and to count on a bigger staff and more money. The fact is that it is easier to blame others for your circumstances than to take responsibility for changing them.
And you go like this and the accountants all play.
Never waste a good crisis.
You go like this and marketing comes in and then sales comes in and everything's glorious, except it's not like that at all.
Crisis presents opportunities. When things are growing, it's really hard to trim up your organization and get them oriented to what's really important for the future.
Begin with the end in mind so that you have the power of intellectual creation.
Get ready for the long haul. You know, when you hit a crisis, you say, things couldn't be any worse. You know what? They'll get a lot worse. You need to face that. It can be a long haul.
The most important thing, and this is not the way certainly most gurus talk, is survival and being decent to the workforce that you have.
That you have to develop a value system based upon principles that are enduring and universal and timeless.
It's only natural to fear the unknown. If you're playing the hero role, you'll be undergoing a dramatic journey, battling everyone, keeping alive the winning dramatic premise of both art and business. No matter how beaten down, the protagonist always comes out with flying colors from the dangerous passage of self-discovery. Strange though it may seem, the frictions at the theater of operations from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., the hostile territory of the workplace, are often incidental to the real-life experiences of the main story. And the antagonists are never definitely defeated.
Don't be Atlas. Get the world off your shoulders. I think it's really important.
That's the foundation around which you build a winning team.
Well, there's no magic formula. Empathy is sort of an understanding of people, a concern, an ability to deal with people.
Lesson number one is face reality, starting with yourself.
And I came up with 38 qualities that you must have to be an effective manager. But Superman wouldn't even qualify. I mean, Kryptonite, if Kryptonite was on the list, Superman wouldn't qualify.
You've got to be out there and tell the truth.
Leaders aren't allowed to have bad days, especially on bad days. And, again, not going to the smirky, silly, laughy, joking sense, but you don't want to look like it's an ordinary day, but it's just like, okay, here we go. And presumably it's the way generals behave before big battles throughout the history of warfare.
So I believe that leadership and management have to be combined.
For the sake of ongoing saga, they might say, "Yours is a great idea. I'll smooth it out with the boss. I just have one more question. That's not in the budget. Could you work on this project? It's no big deal. I never got that email. You didn't get my voicemail? What's wrong with you? You're lucky I don't fire you." Antagonists enjoy their role. particularly with natural emergent leaders. They can be an obstacle, it's true, but they can also be the most powerful teacher. They're all around. Use your intelligence, but be prepared to be unpopular. Spot them and unveil them. Don't let them cling to the comfort of old routines. Shake the status quo. Play your part as a true leader and fight for a change of attitude. Be faithful to your inner call and plunge into it. Let the leader inside you come out. And enjoy the ride, because there is no doubt it is the best of times.